I wade through the water toward the suitcase. As Mama watches me, she begins to cry, gulps air in ragged breaths. She is curled on the bed, arms around her knees as her eyes flicker toward the edges of the stained quilt that are turning dark. She looks the way I look when I have a bad dream and fold my body next to hers, when she reads me stories in a soft voice, waiting for me to fall back asleep. The water is below Papa's chest, but it reaches all the way up to my neck. Papa stands in the water near the headboard and cups Mama's dark cheek with his hand. He whispers things in her ear, wipes the salty streams rolling down her face. I want to come closer and hug her, but Papa tells me with a glance, "Amada, keep calm, keep packing what you can. Let me handle her fear." I imagine this is how Papa must have comforted Mama when he first met her, in Bangladesh, at the border where he was volunteering, where she collapsed out of an overflowing boat into his arms. She must have cried then too, having survived a journey over flooding waters, leaving behind her family to come to this place where so many people see her as just another dark-skinned refugee. She cannot swim and refuses to learn. When we stroll along the canals, Papa always walks closer to the water, keeping her on the inside. Though he has told me the story, I still cannot really believe he convinced her to move here to Venice. But I suppose they love each other, and that is why. Maybe love is the opposite of fear, and so for Mama, they cancel each other out. But now I know that all she wants is to leave, even though they have made this life together here, in this house that Nano died in and passed down to them. I wish we could leave too, even though I really just want the water to go away so I can have my home back. I still remember the days before the flood sirens were so frequent, when they let us run around in the campi to play. That was back when the floods were only in the winter. Now the water just seems to keep coming. For every week that it recedes, another week it floods in. Papa whispers some more. I pick up faint snippets of his reassurances. The boats are coming, there are places on the mainland we can stay, we won't have to pay for them, we'll have a hot meal soon enough. I'll curl up with you. I know that Papa believes in the government boats and the shelters and insists that we just have to be patient. But my friend Nicolo has an older brother who works on the mainland. Nicolo says that the shelters are too full and the government is too slow, that there aren't enough boats and military people to get everyone out for a while. The one time I told Papa about the things Nico says, he didn't like it. His cheeks turned a dark red and his bushy black beard quivered as he told me not to listen to that rascal. So, now when he tells me to trust the rescuers, I say that I do. But tonight I am worried. I don't see the point in saving the clothes in the top drawers if we don't have some way to get them out of here anyway. And I watch the water and imagine it rising higher than my head. I can swim, Papa made me learn, though Mama didn't want me to. But I am still scared of drowning. More, I am scared of Mama drowning, and scared of her fear. Scared of the way her eyes get wide as her mind replays things that send her into terror. Radio calls over her dark, moonless, sinking village, and the cold water she almost drowned in. When I have nightmares, the tales Mama tells are different than the usual bedtime stories. I used to think she had magic powers that let her read in the dark, but really she just makes them up. I can never tell the difference. She spins webs out of things we have read together, invents characters that tangle up with the real thing. Now and then, I turn the worn pages in our copy of 1001 Nights and look for something I swore I remembered Mama reading. An explorer stomping through a sunken green field, a demon with 50 wings, a magician who could grant you a perfect mental map of a place you had never visited before. But Scheherazade never thought of those. For every 1,000 of her long nights, Mama has 1,000 more, spun out of memories.
Hi, I'm Aparna Verma.
Hi, I'm Melina Walling.
And
And this is our project, Movement. With movement, we wanted to use fiction and photography in the format of an artist's book to immerse readers in themes about the environment, identity, and belonging.
Land influences our sense of belonging. Some might say stability, family, circumstance plays a more direct role in your definition of home. And it can, but the land plays a subtle, more powerful pull that we may not recognize at first, but is revealed in our artist book, Movement.
Movement is a collection of short stories and photography that delves into the way the environment affects our senses of identity and belonging.
For example, those who have grown up in a barren desert behave differently than those who live in a crowded city, as we see displayed in our short story, Sounds of the Dunes.
In another one of my stories, we see a woman who grows up hunting in an Indian forest behave really differently when she immigrates to America and begins hunting in another completely different forest.
Our surrounding environment and the land itself plays a dynamic, visceral role in the way we interpret our lives and ourselves. It may not be the obvious answer, but it makes up the core of our being.
So, Aparna and I started thinking about this project in the spring of our junior year, and we both knew that we really wanted to continue working on our writing and storytelling. And in addition to that, I already had a lot of photographs from taking photography classes, from studying abroad, and from simply traveling. So I knew that I wanted to add to that body of work and find a creative way to pull it together.
We're both storytellers and have always loved nature and environmental narratives. I'm especially attracted to mythical stories, or stories steeped deeply in rich cultural narratives that give us a new lens to see our modern landscapes. Growing up, I was told a lot of stories from Hindu mythology, and those epic tales of war and betrayal and heroic feats have definitely impacted how I see the world and my own writing.
As the project went on, Aparna and I realized that our shared Indian background was going to be really important to the work. As we started to think about, how the culture you come from affects your conception of the environment, we decided that we really wanted to explore our Indian heritage. And we started to realize that we had shared experiences, but also differences, and that really started to inform the way that the different pieces came together in the collection.
These stories explore different landscapes and relationships between man and nature, man versus self, and man versus man. They're informed by our background, travels, and people in our life, and how we personally have struggled with our own sense of belonging. Although the collection studies serious topics, we had a lot of fun along the way. Definitely a lot of time spent in cafes, drinking too much coffee, and going over stories or brainstorming. We even got the chance to take a writer's retreat in the deep, rich redwoods of California, which was honestly so needed. We got to de-stress, take photographs, and focus on our stories.
It's been really great to work on the project as a pair. I don't think we could have created the volume of work that we did or come up with the ideas that we did without that collaboration, so it's been really exciting. The opportunity to do an interdisciplinary project was really huge for us. I knew that I wanted to expand on a tradition of nature writing and environmental photography, and I had also taken a couple classes that exposed me to lots of different artist books, and I had experience doing layout design as well, so I thought that being able to put it all together in that form would really serve the work.
Images can express or epitomize the emotion of a story. They can continue the conversation that the story begins. I'm a really visual writer, and my work has a lot of vivid imagery. I also work a lot in sound through podcasts, and that's a really rich medium that also informs my storytelling.
I was really inspired by the essays and photo essays of National Geographic. So, as you probably know, they have a really long tradition of using photography and nonfiction writing to draw readers into a story, using photojournalism to give them images that might pull them into ideas they've never heard of, and then using story to explain that further and really pull them into the issues. And I also knew that artist books come from a really long tradition, but I hadn't really seen as much of fiction and the photojournalistic essay.
You see a lot of poems or poetry and short films, or nonfiction and journalistic essays with photos, but fewer picture books for adults. And we thought it would be a really vivid way of getting readers into the work.
Besides National Geographic, I knew that I was working in a really strong tradition of writers and photographers. I'm particularly thinking about photographers like Ansel Adams, Franz Lanting, Joel Sartori. All of them have already done a lot of work to bring issues of the natural world to light for viewers.
Writers like Richard Carson, Gary Snyder, Edward Abbey, and countless others have really developed the ability to make people care about environmental issues through narrative. Writers like Neil Gaiman, S.A. Chakraborty, and many others take myth and folklore to animate and personify landscapes and show their power. But that canon of nature writers and photographers, for a long time it's had kind of a diversity problem, and that's starting to get better, but I knew that for this project I really wanted to be intentional about bringing different cultural perspectives into this field and into this work. We consciously chose to feature South Asian characters and to draw from Hindu and Islamic mythology to influence our writing. We're trying to understand on a deeper level how the land around us affects our interpersonal relationships and constructions of identity. The immigrant experience ultimately lends a different perspective to view our local landscapes and the stories that they tell. For example, in the work that you heard at the beginning of this video, Luna Santata, the main character experiences discrimination, not only because of her mixed race background, but she really struggles because her mother is a victim of trauma due to being a climate migrant. And so because of that influence and the environment around her, but also because she has this influence of having an Italian father, she has to find the way to walk that line between belonging and not belonging, and that affects her view of the environment. Melina and I worked together to incorporate the Marid, an evil sea spirit that is from Islamic folklore, into the story to create an alternate understanding of Amada's story and segue into the mysterious world of shape-shifting devils, or Rakshas, in Beast of Badlands. Ultimately, we're building on the legacy of environmental and folklore writing, but we're also expanding it into the artist book tradition. We're blending fiction and photography in a way that hasn't been seen before.
This is it, Tony says. He drops his backpack and surveys our surroundings. What do you think? It's the next day, and after first refusing to go, I sat at our campsite, watching Tony disappear over the dunes, the silence pressing around me, the sheerness of it. It didn't take long to catch up, and now we're standing on the lip of a dune, the mountains of Death Valley rising before us as if to defy the sky itself. It's gorgeous, I say. Tony unpacks his gear as I slide off my backpack. The camera shudders to life, and Tony peers through the viewfinder at me. The camera clicks. I bring a hand to my face. Stop it, I say. He hasn't taken a photo of me in a long time. We haven't taken a trip like this in a long time. I look terrible. No, you don't, he says, and gently lowers my hand. Look off into the dunes for me, will you? For me, will you? There must have been so many photographs when, just before clicking the shutter, he'd whispered those words and I would sit and the world would still. Nothing between us but the beeping camera. Even on the night we first met, he asked to take a photo of me behind the bar, beer stains and all. Something about you and the ambiance, he said, and I rolled my eyes and told him he was full of shit, but instead of leaving, he took the photo and ordered a tequila sunrise and refused to move until I told him about how I, a woman, came to own a bar. It's my dad's, I said. He died. After he died, I couldn't stand our empty house and all the tall shadows that stretched from every corner. I threw myself into purple dreams and its splintered floors and old-timers like Mr. Rodney, who always loved his cashews with his whiskey and a hint of honey in his beer. There's something about the way booze loosens people's lips the way they offer their stories to you, willingly, easily, the way they all gather in a dimly lit room as if yearning for something. And then in came Tony, camera strapped to his side, and a confidence in a childhood dream so strong that it burned. There weren't many people like him, people so headstrong yet delusional. But maybe I am one of those people. Maybe that's why I found myself pulled to him, found the long shadows lurking in the corners begin to dissipate. And so when he tore us apart, he hit something deeper. He hit the piece of me within him. You go and do your thing, I say, and take out a file from my bag. Jyoti, he begins, but stops. I watch him slip down the dune, sand tumbling beneath his feet. He stands at the bottom, within the bowl, and points his camera up. A part of me wonders what he's thinking when he lines up the lens, what he envisions the image to be before it materializes into life. Tony glances up, and I look back down at my papers. The sun creeps down my back. A small brown beetle emerges from the sand, and I watch as it skitters along the edge of the dune. The camera beeps again. I look up to see Tony pointing the camera at me, and when he sees me looking, he lowers it. Our eyes meet. There's that same searching look in his eyes from last night. The silence that hangs around the dunes is loud and heavy. Slowly, I lower the file. Tony watches, the camera cocked and ready. He stares as I lift my shirt. The sun slides down my skin, but I shiver. I can feel his eyes on me. Slowly, I peel off my shoes and pants. The sand is warm and rough against the back of my thighs as I unhook my bra. A wind nudges the dunes and they tremble. The sky opens up. His eyes never leave mine as I lay down and prop my head on my arm like the girl in the photo, like the woman I want to be, the alluring, mischievous sprite who can whisk a man away with nothing but her eyes, the woman who can make a man forget the one he loves. Tony raises his camera. The motion is slow, glacial, as the world slows to a hush and the mountains tower and the dunes undulate, and then the shutter clicks, capturing it all.
We hope you enjoy getting to read, view, and experience our artist book. And we also really hope to make print copies very soon, so hopefully you'll get to hold a print edition in your hands someday.
We want to leave you with a sense of connection to the natural world, and a sense that our actions and emotions are really tied to the land in a deep and fundamental way.
So with that, happy reading.